Hello, beautiful people. Ooh, I gotta do something about this hair. Ugh. But that's beside the point. When I've been taking my son to work the past 3 weeks on that one country road, along the country road, just not in the Pacific area, there's a death smell. Now, I know there's a lot of farmers and ranchers along that road. And they got horses, they got cows, they got goats. But yesterday when we drove along there, I'm like, ooh, these farmers need to check their pastures. Well, this morning I was taking the access road before I get up to that country road I take. And I noticed something off in the distance, like the access road is here, there's a drop off the median, and then the highway up over here. Well, my son was looking down at his phone, and I wasn't even going to get his attention or anything. And I'm like, oh, somebody dumped a black dog out here. Because I could see it. So I'm dropping off the speed down to 40, then down to 30. And I'm like, that's not a dog. That's not a dog. And I had turned on the high beams. I know I shouldn't have done that because the traffic going west would have been blinded by my lights. But I had to confirm in what I was seeing. It was a black jaguar. I looked at it. It was like this in the grass. It wasn't laying on its side. It was like this. And it was looking down at the highway, and it was watching everything. And then when I had turned on the high beams, it turned around, looked at me, stood up, did a complete turn, and just sprinted across that access road. And I'm sitting there going, Now, I've never seen one up in person. When I had the high beams on, how can I explain this? It's not like an actual black. It looked like Rosetta stones all through its fur. From its snout down to the tip of its tail. Everywhere. It looked like Rosetta stones everywhere. And I was like, okay, that's unusual. I've seen bobcats here in Central Texas. I've seen a lone wolf here in Central Texas. That thing was freaking huge, that wolf. I've seen mangy coyotes here. I've seen armadillos, possums, raccoons, eagles. But I've never seen a black jaguar until today. And I got back and I was Googling it, and I was like, and I told my husband, I was like, see, that's what I saw. That's what I saw. And I'm holding up my phone for him. And he was like, okay. So I was like, well, let me call the Texas Wildlife Commission. So I called in, explained to the wildlife officer exactly where I seen it at. And he said that was the first call that he's received for something of that nature. And at first I was thinking maybe somebody's big cat escaped. Maybe somebody has a black jaguar. I don't know. But I told them too, I said it still looked young. It was no more than 100 pounds, 80, between 80 and 100 pounds. It still looked young. Like it wasn't worried about anything, anybody, or anything. But it was like very elusive. aloof, like I'm just going to sit here and watch this traffic and everything until I had turned on the high beams, and then I turned around and looked like, oh, here comes a car. Now I got to go run. And then when it took off running, it ran 2 sprints over that access road and down into that field on the south side of Patty Hamilton Road out there in Nolanville. He said that when I called the wildlife officer, he said that he was going to let his biologist know for the area and that he was going to inform the local, there's 2 towns within that vicinity, and that he was going to let them know too, to be on the lookout for a wild animal. He said, I'm not going to consider it dangerous at this moment. And I was like, okay. And then I started thinking about it after I was done talking to this wildlife officer, that if I'm smelling something dead out there in Patty Hamilton, and which is normal because you have farmers out there, but if they have a dead cow, a dead horse, a dead goat or something, or deer on their property, they would probably think it's a pack of wild dogs, more than likely. You wouldn't think of it of a large cat. And I'm telling you, this thing was huge. I'm not thinking, I'm kind of scared to take this road anymore, thinking, oh my God, this thing was, I could have easily hit it. And I'm grateful I didn't. But I understand that they're indigenous to central Mexico. Once in a while you get some crossing the Texas border. But this far north in central Texas, not one time have I ever heard of one being up this far north in Texas. But it was like a few years ago, they had a wild elk running around in Waco. And no, it didn't belong to anybody or anything. It was a wild elk. And from what they're saying, once in a while they do get wild elk within the area. And I'm like, okay, we're like 60, 70 miles away from Waco. So Waco can get a wild elk, in which they were able to trap. And one of the elk ranchers within the area was like, this don't belong to anybody. It would have been branded. It would have been tagged. But no, it's a wild one. So, but I'm thinking, maybe it could be a black jaguar that's just a wild one and doesn't belong to anybody. Because I know here in Texas we do have a problem with people owning wild tigers, in which we shouldn't. Should be a no-no, people. But, I was thinking maybe if instead of somebody owning a tiger, maybe somebody had owned a wild black jaguar, and I was like, and when I told him, he goes, no, we don't have any reports of anybody losing a black jaguar. I was like, okay. So he was going to let his biologist know, and hopefully they'll send somebody out, to see if there's tracks that they can find before it starts to rain again. All right, beautiful people. Y'all come back now, you hear?